are in high demand right now after a absolutely rousing speech at the Republican National Convention last night. I want to start with, just for you personally, what was that experience like, speaking on that stage to that crowd and getting the response that you got last night?
It was overwhelming. It was powerful. It was sensational. It was sensational. Yeah.
Uh,
You know, a lot of energy in that room, a lot of electricity. You know, you could feel a spiritual power in that room. Mm-hmm.
Were you surprised at how well your message was received by everyone in that room last night?
Well, my intention was to get them, roused. What I do is I get the crowds motivated. I try to inspire, and wake the crowd up. So yeah, was I surprised by it? No, not really. Not really, because it happened before in the Bronx when Trump came to the South Bronx. That crowd, that was a tough crowd, supposedly. If you let, certain media outlets tell it, okay, the South Bronx was supposed to be a hostile crowd. However, it was the complete opposite. So, I saw the reaction from the South Bronx. So if we could do that in the South Bronx, we could do that anywhere. Yep.
Madeline, your story is well known to some of our audience, but not to everyone. Can you just tell us a little bit about, everything that brought you to this point, from, going back to, unfortunately, your nephew and then your son and having to deal with all of this?
Yeah. Well, my nephew Alvin was killed way back 15, 16 years ago in Bellport, Long Island, in a drive-by shooting. Alvin was only 14. I'm not at liberty to talk too much about that because that's my sister's son, and everybody handles their grief process differently. And out of respect for my sister, if and when she ever, gets to the point where she's able to speak about what happened to her son, then I will leave that to her. But it started with Alvin. Okay, and fast forward 2018, my boy, Sergeant Hassan, killed in Harlem, by a family of homicidal maniacs who had no business being, in the street from the beginning. That was the turning point for me. I always had some, level of wanting to do something, in the community to help victims of crime, especially our young people. But we never had the real drive until Hassan was killed. And then, it turned into the fight with the Manhattan criminal court system, trying to get justice and navigating and being stonewalled and being delayed. And then COVID hit, so then that was a whole year delay. And then Alvin Bragg, got elected, and then he's handed the case, and the whole entire, murder and gang assault case against 4 people falls apart. And then now we only have 2 people being held accountable for murder, and they were even offered sweetheart deals by Alvin Bragg, not to mention the 2 where the gang assault and the murder charges were completely dismissed. All right, then we're sitting through trial, and they're trying to tell me not to believe this video of my son being butchered, okay? Over and over and over again, I'm watching this video, and they're trying to convince me to not believe my lying eyes. And so these are the things that drove me to really put my hooks in like a pit bull, and really, just ready to fight, right? Because I know if it's happening to me, it's happening to a lot of other people across the board. So that's what inspired me, and that's what pushed me. That's what happened. Yeah.
And that message that you put forward last night, from all of that life experience that you unfortunately have had to deal with, that message came across loud and clear last night. What message are you hoping people will take from what you said last night, and what do you think will come out of it?
Well, I'm really hoping and praying that more mothers, more families will begin to, step forward and tell their experiences, and hopefully reach out to me at Rescue Angel Consulting, and allow me to assist them through the process, through the grief process. All right. Through, just different strategies and techniques that I've learned, on my own, through getting through on the day-to-day, the navigating of the court system, the buddy, the court buddy process, helping them, to realize that they need to ask certain questions, different things, that mothers and families really need to know to help them through their grief process. And also that it will begin to change the narrative in the poor minority community, all right, to help them to begin to look at their self, all right, and look at the way that they're living in their community. We have a certain amount of responsibility that we need to be held accountable for. We can't continue to blame everything on a system. We have to, parent our children. A lot of the stuff begins within the four walls of the home, and we have to make sure that our teenagers, especially, are doing the right thing. We need to stay on top of them in school and different things, whether they like it or not. So that, and also just to hold myself as an example of a poor Black woman, all right, a poor minority woman. If I can do it, if I can find my voice, anybody can. All right. And there's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be afraid of. Fear was touched on last night and at the convention last night. Some of the people talked about fear. Fear doesn't come from God. God gives us a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. And there's nothing to be afraid of. Our children need us to be their voice.
Madeline, I wanted to ask you, you said your children, and I wanted to ask you, you talked about your view of the country and where it is right now, but I'm curious what you think your son would think of the place the country's in right now, in the state that we're in right now. How do you think he'd feel about where we're at?
He would think that, it has a lot to do with why he's not here today with his own children, all right, to raise them, all right, and to be a father to his two boys. They have to grow up without their dad, and a little girl, so he would think that, it's because of, the policies and the different things that are in place, is contributes directly to the very reason why he's not here today. But what he would think would be for me to continue to fight, okay, to continue to fight and to stand up, all right, and speak up, especially against Alvin Bragg, because Alvin Bragg is hurting a lot of people. I don't care how they tried to package that and how they tried to dress that up. I know what I saw. And there were witnesses in that courtroom with me that saw that video, and they did not see Mary Saunders assault Sergeant Hassan Correa with a shoe. And that's what she was charged with, assault with a shoe. All right. So, you can fool some people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to keep coming back until we get full justice and closure for my son.
And you spoke very loudly about Alvin Bragg and the job that he has done. Alvin Bragg, obviously prosecuting former president and Republican presumptive nominee Donald Trump right now. Those two situations go hand in your mind?
Yes. Only reason why I say that is because Alvin Bragg is made up charges. He made up charges for Mary Saunders, assault with a shoe. That's not even a charge on a book. It's not even in our penal code, assault with a shoe. And I believe that he made up charges for President Trump too. That's why he couldn't actually define what he was charging Trump with. All right, because he's making it up, and he's been making it up as he goes along. Okay, he's padding down cases. All right, he's manipulating data. He's not charging people with murder, so he doesn't have to count it as murder. He's letting people go straight from the precinct. So of course, he's manipulating the numbers to make it look like his numbers are low, and when in all actuality they are not. When you don't prosecute crime, you can't count it. All right. So yes. And also Trump's experience was sitting in the cold, dark, dreary, depressing courtroom for all that time. All right. And getting the whole vibe of the way, victims or defense or anyone is treated in those courtrooms. I sat through that for 5 going on 6 years. So I can identify exactly when they were saying a couple of months back how cold and dark and dreary, it is. I know the feeling. All right. I know the feeling. So yes, I do identify with him that way. And I also feel that he has been unfairly prosecuted, because Alvin Bragg can't even define the charges, just like he couldn't define with Mary Saunders. All right. Assault with a shoe is not even a charge. All right. So, yeah. And this is his style. This is Bragg's style across the board. It's his style.
You also said last night that you felt betrayed and abandoned by the current administration, by the Democratic Party, by President Biden, Kamala Harris. Why do you feel that way? Why do you feel as though they've let you down?
All the people have to do in poor minority communities is step outside their door. and concede that they've been abandoned by the entire administration. In New York City, that's where I live. All a person has to do is not even turn on the TV, because you're only going to get part of the story. Just step outside and you could see that we've been abandoned and neglected, voting for the same Democrats over and over again for decades, including myself, all right, or not voting at all. And therein lies the problem. A lot of people just don't bother to vote because they don't feel that their vote counts because of the quality of life, issues that they're facing. You have from inflation, you have from illegals being dumped onto the sidewalk, put in our communities to suck up the scarce resources that we already don't have. Right now, the illegals' food stamp card is worth more than our black card. And I just have to say that. I just have to say that and put that out there, and people are just getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we have been completely abandoned by the Democratic Party that we have been, loyal to for decades, including myself, until my son was killed. And I saw how the entire apparatus of New York City turned their back on me, and they shunned me and they ostracized me. It's painful to talk about that, because I thought that, I would find an ally in them. All right. But because my boy was stabbed to death and not shot to death, they just, they turned their back on me. They turned their back on me. They stabbed me in the back, and treated me like I was an outcast, including and not limited to Al Sharpton and his National Action Network. I called there and they slammed the phone in my face. The woman slammed the phone in my face because I told her I needed help. My son was stabbed, and it's like I was begging for something. All I wanted was somebody probably just to listen to me at that moment, and it's just a lot with New York City, just a lot. If I'm going through it, there's a whole lot of other people that are going through it,
Absolutely.
silently. They're not fighting like I am, all right? And it's probably because they're afraid of, the way they're going to be treated. But sometimes it's a silent killer. They're sitting with the grief, and it's eating them up in their mind, going into deep depression. They need to find the will and the strength to fight, fight.
And Madeline, I'm sure you wish you didn't have to fight, and I'm sure you wish you just could just be at home, be in Bellport, be wherever, and just be taking it easy, enjoying your time with your family. And instead, you have to do this and have these arguments and make your voice heard. What changes do you? This is my last thing for you. What changes do you want to see? What are the tangible changes you want to come out of the experiences you've had to make sure no one else has to deal with this?
Well, I think that on a community level, all right. I don't want the Republicans to think that, just because we have a lot of Democrats that are walking away from the plantation of the Democratic Party and going to vote Republican, that our vote is going to be a given. All right. That I don't want them to take our vote for granted. They have to come into our community and engage with the people. All right, court the vote. Show us that you're not going to treat us like Democrats have treated us for decades. Bring something, major investments into our communities. Replace the guns and the gangs and the knives, and the street with hammers and nails and shovels and bulldozers and cranes and steel worker, OSHA 30. Train our young men that are involved in the criminal justice system how to use the heavy equipment and rebuild our communities. Pay them decent money so they can support themselves and their family, so they can lift themselves out of poverty to avoid incarceration. That's for the community, right? For victims, I would like to see some strong policy, legislation for crime victims' rights in their families. Because right now there are no or very little rights for victims. I would like to see either on a federal level or a state level that murder, there are no plea deals for murder. You take those cases to trial and you let a jury decide innocence or guilt. What is this mess? Offering plea deals for murder, especially when you have the evidence to prove that these people in other states they do it. In other states they do it. You know, murder is capital punishment. You know, capital murder, you get life without the possibility of parole. There should be no plea bargains. There should be no. They're lucky that we don't have the death penalty in New York, all right? Because they have it in other states. So, you know, that's two things. You know, bring in, you know, some tangible investments into our community to help our young men raise themselves out of poverty. Drug treatment programs, like when Rudy Giuliani and Governor Pataki were in office. All right, they had alternatives to incarceration, long-term inpatient programs. All right, instead of going to jail, you're mandated to a treatment facility out of the city for 12 to 24 months. All right, and if you don't complete the program, then you go to jail. They need to bring that back. The mandate, if they can mandate a COVID shot, they can mandate people to treatment. It's been done and it was wildly successful. Many, many lives were saved during the crack era. Many lives were saved. Instead of going to jail, they went to treatment. And that's what needs to happen now because of the fentanyl epidemic, because of the pills, because even marijuana is highly addictive, you know, and they're committing crimes just to get high off of weed. So, you know, those are three things: jobs, drug treatment, and stronger legislation to protect the rights for crimes, for victims of crime.